Yeah. Hello there. I guess it's been a while. Hi. Did I say that already? Yeah, I did. Sorry, I just had a big old Canadian cigarette. Listening to some music and shit. So I'm a little floaty in the brain space. But I'm bored, and nobody's around online. So I figured I'd try and scratch the boredom itch and the being kind of lonely itch by just talking to myself and pretending I'm having a conversation with people, because I sort of am, even though it's this weird sort of temporal displacement where I'm having the conversation now and then people are reacting internally to it later, perhaps, if they're watching this. Anyway. Fuck. Intro, Squirrel. They happen early these days. Maybe it's age. I don't know. Maybe it's a little too much of the devil's lettuce. Could be both. Probably is. I gotta pause already. See, the problem is, as anybody who's not living in a cave knows, there's a lot of shit going on in the world right now in general. Fucking protests all over the world for various reasons. America's kind of losing its shit right now. I don't mean to sound critical. It's not a criticism. I mean, there's a lot of the chaos and rage is valid, at least from a moral perspective. Being angry about certain things is appropriate, I believe. Burning down a mom and pop corner store because somebody was wrongfully killed or treated inappropriately doesn't accomplish a lot other than making for exciting headlines. Now, I understand that need to let loose, the desire to, I'll quote the ever-wise and immortal Doom guy. I understand the desire to want to rip and tear. I think a large majority of us, on some level, subconscious and conscious, collectively are feeling very limited by the scope of the world that we are able to inhabit. Why is my door open? Can I close that? Anyway, there we go. And that's another thought in and of itself, the limits of the world we exist in. And I don't just mean the physical world. I don't mean how far we've been into space. I do mean that. I don't mean the narrow slice of reality that we are able to perceive without some kind of external aid. I also mean by how far we can travel on a given amount of time, how far we can afford to go, how many walls are between us, fences, borders, that sort of thing. If you want a whole squirrel about that, I did one called Squirrel in a Gilded Cage. I can't remember what number it was. I kind of go on about that whole thing. I think it's it's a good long one. So, like I said, it's a whole concept in and of itself. And I'm about to get lost down a fucking squirrel tunnel. So, I'm going to pause a sec and gather my thoughts. So, we're all sort of feeling caged. And why? Why do we seem to be more collectively trapped in our realities? What's different? What's changed? I think part of it is, technology. And not for the obvious reason of it makes life easier for us. It allows us to travel places in airplanes. But for the perhaps less obvious reasons. Technology has expanded our imagination. Seems perhaps like a curious thing to say. Well, here's what I mean about it. Or here's what I mean by that. I was fortunate enough to grow up as a kid. Now, don't get me wrong, I grew up pretty dirt poor. You know, like, no joke, I laugh about it, but I had a good life. I wasn't lacking for food or shelter or clothing. Just never name brand, unless it was on sale for some reason. By then, it was usually 5 years out of date. I didn't care about that shit, really. I knew it wasn't important. Sidetracked already. Welfare squirrel. I can say that as a joke because I and my mom lived on welfare for quite a while. You know, thankfully in Canada it was enough for us to get by fairly comfortably by a lot of country standards. So, I have the luxury of being able to see humor in a situation where in some countries poverty is severe. Anyway, fucking sidetracked by a poverty squirrel. Where was I going? Oh yeah. So, nevertheless, my mom always did her best to encourage me at asking questions how the world works. And if she didn't know the answer, she'd try and find out some answers for me, plural. Because if it was a big question, there was always more than one perspective to answer it from. So I was lucky that way. Also, my mom was a lover of art and music, and I got exposed to a lot of different kinds of it. Museums and art galleries were a huge part of my childhood, as were documentaries, about everything. Including, the typical, lion eating a deer, fairly violent shit, but my mom's like, this is nature. It's not pretty, but it's not cruel. It's just how it has to be for certain things to survive. Now, as a species, we're able to get beyond that. I've touched on that a few times. I may go back to it as a topic in this squirrel, depending on length. Before I get sidetracked again. But I also got exposed to all kinds of great movies when I was a kid. The Dark Crystal, Neverending Story, Goonies, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, you name it. I was, in my tens and tweens from 70, I was born in 77, so that'll give you an idea how old I am. Anyway, so I was at the perfect age in the late 80s, coming on 10 years old to see all of these movies, and it wasn't always in the theater because that was expensive. We didn't have a lot of money. And it's not like a movie would come out in the theater and, 3 months later it's out on Netflix or Disney Channel or somebody's pirated a good copy online, It wasn't like that. There was no online, right? So every once in a while, either my mom would save up enough money or the parents of my friends would collectively, because all the parents talk to each other, that's how things were done back in the day, would collectively get together and they'd get together the money to rent a VCR, like a video cassette recorder. Because you couldn't buy one unless you had money, because they were like, $1,000, $2,000 for friggin' VCRs, old school VCRs, right? So your average run-of-the-mill person didn't have one. Even the people we knew that had quote-unquote money and lived in nice houses didn't have them because they were too expensive. So we rented VCR and movies like that. So when Return of the Jedi came out, it was like 4 years before it came out on video cassette. So, I had seen Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back fairly well back to back by the time they came out. Like, I saw Star Wars on TV because it was released like 3 or 4 years after it came out on TV as a special. Then I saw The Empire Strikes Back. It was one of those, VCR rental parties. Anyway, I'm really getting fucking sidetracked with movies. The point is, because of reading a lot, Lord of the Rings, sci-fi, fantasy, whatever the hell happened to be, detective novels, watching all kinds of crazy movies, growing up in the age of video games where you can go beat the crap out of gods, like in God of War, or play games like GTA, or go be a space captain somewhere and save the universe. I think collectively And not only that, but also you experience other cultures and the stuff like this that they put out, their perspective they put on it, collectively as a species. We've seen more and are able to dream about more that is outside of our own experience. Whereas back when we was cavemen banging on logs and rocks for music, what we knew was what we had seen ourselves or what our friends and relatives could fucking oog and og at us and tell a story and paint some cave paintings. You know, our ability to imagine, and even perhaps our ability to dream and to go outside of our own subconscious was fairly limited, and that's growing now. So nowadays, it's like the bottom half of the population, age-wise. You know, let's say 50 to 100 be the top half, 50 below would be the bottom half. Have all pretty much grown up in, I don't even know what the word is, conceptually diverse landscapes of potential for imagination. Jesus, that was hard to put out in language that would kind of describe it. Hopefully I did it justice. Anyway, and I think especially in the younger generations who are more exposed to things like video games and cool movies and who have friends from all over the world perhaps because they met them online and they learn about other cultures and how different people speak and the different things that they find cool and why. And by the same token, we're still bound by kind of quote-unquote the old world where you gotta go to some fucking job. If you're lucky, you're doing a job that you wanted to, you lived out your dream, you're a bush pilot maybe, flying this looks like a Canadian Beaver. I'm not even joking, that's the name of a very famous plane. For bush pilots, Canadian Beaver, and then when they put a turboprop on it, they called it a Turbo Beaver. Not too freaking bad, eh? Anyway. Shit. Canadiana Squirrel. So, now that these people are existing in a world where you can look like a 9-foot-tall reptoid from the planet Ubunka Clunk if you feel like it, right? Are perhaps less concerned with external appearance and with what kind of music they listen to. And I realize there's a lot of trolling and hate out there online, but honestly, in my experience of years of playing online, it really is the minority, sorry. Most people I encounter online are, well, silent and have no impact. Generally speaking, the ones who do interact are nice people. They just want to have fun and play games. Every now and again you get somebody who's a bit of a dick, but, you know, then again, I don't play Call of Duty online, so. And there's a reason for it. Not just because it's not my type of game, but anyway. Another squirrel. A lot of squirrels today. So people are pent up, you know, in these limited lives, going to some fucking job every day where they do the same damn repetitive, kind of meaningless sort of thing that could probably be automated and free people from that sort of existence. But we need to do that sometimes to excessive degree just to make enough money to get by, and it cages us. It keeps us within a certain radius of our jobs that we're chained to, of our houses that we're stuck to, you know, our things that hold us down, and we can't even see our own world, although now we have the ability to travel fairly easily to any portion of the world. You know, I'm leaving money out of the equation there. It is possible. We have access to the technology. It's just that there's always an expense. There's always a money chain that gets in the way. It's part of the problem. People are seeing those chains now. They don't know how to break them. They see injustice, or what they perceive as injustice, and they rattle their chains, and they see their captors perhaps with a little fear in their eyes, and it makes them feel free. It makes them feel like they're tearing down the walls of the cell that our species has built around itself, partially to keep the dangerous things out. I think that's part of it. I don't know if it's the whole story. It's kind of the meat of what I wanted to say, maybe? You know? And then you get... Ah, shit. Well then. So then you get people freaking out about having to wear a mask for 10 minutes in a store because there's a pandemic going on, thinking it's just like a bad case of the flu. Well, for some people, that's all it is. A friend of mine had it. He said it wasn't that bad. But he's a young, healthy person. You know. I had the swine flu back in the day, old H1N1. It sucked for a week, but, you know, again, I didn't feel like I was going to die. But people did die from it. But, you know, so, existentially speaking, we're beating at the walls of our cell as a species. And we're starting to maybe recognize the ridiculousness in situations where people lose their absolute shit over something as simple as just wearing a mask for a few minutes while they're in public. It's worked in places. Yeah, limiting yourself sucks. Lockdown sucks. It's terrible for the economy, and we do rely on that economy for our survival because, well, we've made it as it stands so much part of our very lifeblood as a species. I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know how to make a better system. I'm not saying I do. I don't know all the shit that's going on. Like, there's other parts in Europe, there's huge protests going on, abortion laws in, I can't remember what country, I'm sorry, but it's somewhere in like a former Russian country or something like that. You know, apologies if I'm getting that totally wrong, but, you know, you'd think by now, after decades of fighting about that we'd figure it out, right? At least we're trying. It's nice to see people trying, but it'd be nice if instead of screaming and burning and throwing bricks through windows, we could just sit down with each other and see sentient beings around us and speak to each other in that manner. And somehow or other, find a way around the barriers that stop that. There are a lot of those barriers. One of them is education. Some people just don't know enough to open themselves. For some people, it's religion. Not going to single any out. But if religion tells you you have to believe, here's how it is, period. Then somebody else goes out with a stick and pokes something and goes, nah, well, actually, you know, I think maybe it's like this. Look, I found another one. I'll poke it too. You see, same thing happened. And then they get into a disagreement. And because one side won't adapt its beliefs to encompass another's, either way, you know, in either direction, in that particular sort of kind of terrible analogy, it never goes anywhere. And I could get into the whole religion versus science debate. And I may give my perspective on it at some point in time. But for right now, that is a whole pit of thorns that I don't feel like dancing around right at this moment. So I think for the time being, I'm sort of going to leave it there. We got to come together if we're going to ever get out of this cage that we've built for ourselves. I don't know how to do it, but I think if we all sit down and seriously just speak to each other without forgetting that the person you're speaking to is a sentient being who, on a deeply fundamental level, wants exactly the same things that everyone wants. To live, to be happy, to be fed, to be sheltered. And I think most importantly, over all those things, because if this last criteria is not met, in my opinion, all of those things ultimately don't matter. We need to be interested. That's it. Have a good one. Don't stop thinking. Be excellent to one another.